Good morning and welcome to Tanya and Education. This is our class on chapter 16 of the Tanya. Okay? And in this class, we're going to learn what to do if we are worried that we're an uninspired Jew. We're a Jew, we're keeping the religion, we're serving God, but we find ourselves that we're uninspired. Are we disqualified by not being inspired? Okay? And the Alter Rebbe is going to give us some very good advice, and it's all based around the Beinani. Okay, the Beinani is the fellow that the book, the Tanya, right, is called Sefer Shel Beinanim, or in the English edition, the book for in-betweeners, right? And the goal of the Tanya here is to teach us how to be the average Jew, and we've been learning that the average Jew is not so average, right? Because what the Alter Rebbe expects of us to be the average Jew is that a Jew, when he knows this is the right thing to do, he does it. If he knows it's the wrong thing to do, he doesn't do it. He never slips. How many people do you know like that? Right? They never slip. Right? This is a rare breed. Right? Last week, he started to describe different types of Beinani, different types of in-between Jews that they never do the Avera. They never do the wrong thing. They always control themselves. Reason number one, which you learned last week, could be he's not passionate, or he's just not into, he doesn't care about passions of the world, so it doesn't entice him. Okay, very rare person. We don't have too many of those guys around, right? But you have occasional ones. Then you have a fellow who made it his habit. He keeps Judaism as a habit. He keeps kosher as a habit. He goes to shacharit. He prays. This is a habit. So he doesn't sin because he's not in the habit of sinning. He's in the habit of doing mitzvot and Torah, and this is not his habit. He's a habitual, perfect Jew. Great. If you can do it, wonderful. Okay.
So mitzvot, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So mitzvot should be on the habit or on the willing?
Very good. So that's a question that we're going to address today. Ideally, the short answer is that no, mitzvot should be inspired. You should be passionate when you do a mitzvah. You should be excited. I have an opportunity to serve my King, to serve God, my Creator, who made me, who gave me life, who gave me this wonderful world. This is the best opportunity that I have to be closest to the greatest one. If you had an opportunity to see the President of the United States, the CEO, okay, maybe these days no one respects him, okay, the CEO of Microsoft, the CEO of Google, CEO of something, right? You're going to be with this person, and do them a favor. You're going to be so excited to have this connection, right? That's how mitzvot should be done. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't feel that way. So the Alter Rebbe is coaching us what to do. Okay, so first he coached us about the guy who he does the right thing because he's not inspired. He's not passionate. Then he told us about a guy who has a habit. This week we're going to learn about the ideal Beinani, the ideal situation. Exactly what your question is. What is the ideal? The ideal is what he's going to tell us right now. This is what we can all pray that we can reach one day. What is that? What is that? That is that we use our mind, we use our brain to study about God, to develop understanding about God, and the study of Hasidic philosophy aims to do that by making God accessible into, subjects that we can understand with practical applications. That's the whole goal of Chabad Hasidus. Chabad, by the way, is an acronym for Chachma, Binah, Dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. It's basically using your brains, using your intellect to develop what? Then to develop passions and emotions to love God and to be awed and fear, respect of God, and actually then to go and perform mitzvot practically. That is the ideal. Okay? Now, how do you do that? All right? How do you do that? Can't just turn a switch in your brain and boom, it happens. What it actually looks like is many hours of thinking and learning and thinking, reviewing in your mind what you learned, becoming inspired. It's not so easy. Chabad had in its early years a school, a yeshiva called Yeshiva Tomchei Tmimim. It was born in Russia in the little village of Lubavitch. The Chabad Rebbeim founded the school, and they had one of the unique things about this school was they taught not only the Talmud, not only the Jewish law, but they also taught about how to pray like a Jew, how to pray with passion, how to pray with meditation. Not just to say the words, but to meditate on the words and to become aroused and excited. And there were some of these students that were coached by the Rebbe himself how to really concentrate and pray at length. And there were a couple of them that would sit in a small side room and they would literally pray all day, morning until night. That's all they did. They barely had time for anything else, for eating, for learning. They were totally engrossed in study and meditation and prayer. This is not for everybody, right? But there was a couple of 2%ers of the yeshiva. That was their avodah. That's what they did. They could handle it. Most people.
It's possible only in the yeshiva.
Maybe, yeah, that's true.
Out of the yeshiva.
Correct. We got to work for a living. That's right. You got to work for a living. Okay. So the story goes, right? The story goes, and we're gonna discuss that point soon. The story goes that one day the Rebbe Rashab, the founder of the yeshiva, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, came into the room where some of these students were praying. There was one particular student, his name was Shilem, Reb Shilem. He was a young man, 20 years old. Some people, 20-year-olds, are passionate about what? About their sports team, about their career, about fun things in life, right? He was passionate about God. Very rare individual. He was in love with God. He was spending his days meditating and praying. The Rebbe walks into that room because he just attended a funeral. And there's a custom, some people observe, that when you finish the funeral, you go into the synagogue and you say a certain psalm, Yesheb b'Seiser Elyon, which some recite at a funeral, right? He who dwells on high, alone on high. And there's a custom that you sit down in a chair, you recite it, then you get up, you sit in another chair, you recite it, you get up, you sit in another chair, 7 times. You may have seen by a Jewish funeral, they have this idea of carrying the coffin and stopping for another time why this is done, etc. But bottom line, he comes into this room and he's going to observe this custom of sitting down and getting up and sitting down and getting up. So you would think that this would be distracting to those who are sitting in there meditating. So he sits down, and this Shilem, this young man, is meditating, on the prayers. He sits down next to him and he says, Yeshev b'Seiser. The young man does not move. He sits to his left. The young man doesn't move. He sits in front of him. The young man doesn't move. He's going around 7 times around this guy, saying the paragraph. He's not moving. The Rebbe gets up. As he's leaving the room, he turns around. He says, and some other people who are there in the room, they hear him say this. He points to this bachor. He says, "Zuhi avodat hamal lebeinani," from the Tanya that we're studying now. This is the perfect service of the Beinani, the intermediate Jew. He's so engrossed in prayer and meditation, doesn't even notice a thing. That's the ideal state. The ideal state is you're so inspired, you're in such meditation about God, and the meditation has helped you develop passions and feelings for God that you don't want to sin anymore. You're inspired, you're in awe. Problem is, as you said, we got to go to work. And even if we're in yeshiva, those bachurim studying in yeshiva, I have news for you. I studied in yeshiva for many years. Right? I definitely was not on that level. Right? You start studying, you start reading the book, right? And you know what? I gotta take a break. I'm tired. Let me go get a coffee. Let me go take a walk. How long can you concentrate? Not everybody is born with the mental capacity of concentration for so long. Okay? And nevertheless, so the Alter Rebbe is going to give us some advice about that. soon. But first, he wants us to. First, I just want to make the point that this is not something. It's very important to understand why this works and to understand that this is correct. Because, first of all, there were many who were opposed to the Alter Rebbe's teaching of this method. There were many, even from the Hasidic community, who were opposed to it. Right? There was something called in those days when the Hasidic movement was founded. There was something called mitnagdim, opponents. Right? They were opposed to it. They were opposed to the general idea of a new movement that taught that Judaism was about passion, about feeling, about excitement. They didn't relate to that. And there were many objections that they had, and some of them, were resolved by the Alter Rebbe and his contemporaries. But bottom line was, not only did the Alter Rebbe have opposition to being a Chassid, to teaching about praying and being inspired as a main way of serving God, when other Jews in that generation were focused mainly on Torah study as a very big ideal, which the Alter Rebbe in his Tanya does not negate, and he explains to you how prayer and meditation could help you appreciate and have a greater attachment to God and inspire you to further Torah study and to learn Torah study much more than if you were not inspired. Right? But the Alter Rebbe also had opposition, not only for being Hasidic, but for coming up with this idea that meditation is a goal in Judaism. Why? Why would anybody be opposed to that? Because there were many Jews who were very suspicious about serving God with your mind. Because serving God with your mind sounds very cynical, sounds very dry, sounds very... we know the mind could be a tool of skepticism. Right? If somebody, you look at an intellectual person, do you ever think of an intellectual person as an inspired person? As a person who's inspired, who's emotional? Usually the intellectual person are the bookworms. They sit, they study with their glasses on their nose, and they're focused. They're not very excited people. So and sometimes the more people are into intellectualism, the more they can be skeptical, and a lot of times come to deny God. The intellectuals, sometimes you have people to say, well, God doesn't exist. Prove to me God exists. I don't believe you. And then, you can go around in circles, right? I had a student once, a teenager in a youth group that I was involved in. So it was Shavuot, and we were planning, and now today he's a rabbi and an accomplished educator. But so we were planning a lecture. The kids would give their own lectures. So his lecture had something to do with faith. And he was preparing something, but he was a very intellectual. And he prepared a beautiful argument for belief in God. And then, right before, he said, you know what, maybe I don't believe it. I'm not going to present it. And we had to get the rabbi of the synagogue to go and talk to him to try to convince him, because the mind could go both ways. Okay, now I believe, now I don't believe, now I'm skeptical, now I'm into it. He ended up giving the lecture, and then years later, his very inspired rabbi is inspiring others. But a lot of Jews were worried about making Judaism too intellectual. Judaism is about faith. Judaism is about belief. You believe in God. That's it. You don't need any proofs. It's true. We do believe in God. And it's also true that we don't need any proof that God is real, because it's just self-evident to us as who we are. The Jewish people are believers, the children of believers. God has been so real in our people's history that, yes, we don't need proofs. We accept on faith and on all of the miracles and wonders that God has done for our people throughout all the generations. That is 100% true. The Alter Rebbe is not negating that. The Alter Rebbe is telling us, and actually the Alter Rebbe wrote in a letter to a colleague who was arguing with him about this approach. The Alter Rebbe explains, you forgot what the Talmud says. What does the Talmud say? The Talmud says there could be an individual who's a thief. He's about to break and enter into someone's house. And the Torah says that when he's going to break and enter into someone's house, if you have a weapon, and you can defend yourself. You can even kill that thief, and you will not be considered a murderer. Why? Because you can presume, probably, if he's going to break and enter into your house in the middle of the night, unless it's your father, right, that he's ready to kill you if you catch him. So you have to protect yourself. Such a person, the Gemara says, Ganva apu machtarta l'rachmana karya. A thief, when he's about to break in, he says, please God, help me be successful. I should steal a lot, not get caught, and come home with the loot. So the Alter Rebbe says to his friend, you're forgetting. You want to make Judaism just about emotions without the brains? You could end up with people that are doing all kinds of sins, breaking and entering and murdering and who knows what, and they call God, oh God, please help me. How do you have that? How do you have such a crazy situation? Very simple. Because if your faith is something outside of you, it's not real to you. If your faith is something, I believe in God, He stays where He is, He blesses me, doesn't bother me, doesn't get involved in my life. That's faith. You can believe in God. God is real, but it's not within you. It's not something that is real to you. Like we spoke about in many classes. How do you know you're by the hospital? You go to the hospital. How do you know? It's a building like any other. You see a bunch of people in white coats outside smoking cigarettes. This is the hospital, right? Why? Right? Because it's very funny. If you go into the hospital, you say, doctor, should I smoke? Is it healthy? No, smoking is bad. Surgeon General says, it'll kill you. Then cigarette break, the doctors, the nurses, they're outside smoking. What's going on? Intellectually, they know, right? But they don't have the maturity, right, to break the habit. Okay? So what the Alter Rebbe is arguing is that to be successful at inspiring ourselves, we have to take the time not just to believe something, to know something superficially. We have to study. We have to, when we pray, we have to think carefully about the words and meditate on what Chassidut teaches us about God's greatness. And then we can become inspired that in depth study to make it real to us. Make it real, make it part of us. Now, what happens? Okay? What happens if I'm not inspired? Study as I may, I study so hard, I'm not inspired. This is chapter 16 of the Tanya. Person comes, this is, Beinani number 2, he's smart, he's serving God by meditating, but he doesn't develop any feelings. No feelings. Does he give up? Does he say, okay, you know what, maybe I'm fake, maybe I'm not real, maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe Judaism is not for me. What should I do? Can I do mitzvot and I'm dry? Can I put on my tefillin and pray to God when emotionally I don't care about it? I want to care about it. I really want to, but I don't feel any emotion. I don't feel any excitement. What can I do? This person, and he's bothered by it. Now, we're not speaking about a person who's, doesn't care. We're speaking about a Jew who sat down, he studied the books, he tried really hard, he meditated. He's not getting anything. So the Alter Rebbe tells him, look, there are different temperaments. Different people get inspired by different things. Some people are easy to inspire. Some people are not easy to inspire. He quotes that there's something called a soul that's born in the fetal position. This is a very interesting concept. Just like a baby is born curled up and gets its sustenance through its navel, through its belly button, right? And then once he's born, they cut the umbilical cord, the navel closes, and the baby's head is on top and his feet are on bottom, right? And the body starts to develop. According to Hasidic, the mysticism explains that the soul develops also in such a way. When the soul comes down, it's all curled up. The mind, the head, and the feet are all around each other, meaning all around the middle. Meaning to say, the mind, the intellect, and the feet, the power of action, are all around the emotions. They're all curled up. That's why a baby is a selfish, emotional creature. Right? A child is more emotional, and the more they grow up and they open up emotionally, maturity-wise, their mind starts to be on top, to be dominating the heart. They start to be more mature, more able to be logical, right? Some people are stuck with personalities that are more self-centered. They care about their body more, and they, you're telling me about God. Okay, very nice, good subject. Put the book away. Let's go surfing. Put the book away. Let's go get pizza, right? This is a reality. So should such a Jew just give up? No. Alter Rebbe says no, because there is a saying of our sages: Machshava tova, a good thought, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa lo lemasa. God joins it to an act, to the deed. Says the Alter Rebbe. What does that mean? There are four steps to being this Beinoni. Step number 1, I use my mind to study and to meditate. Step number 2, right? Step number 2, I generate feelings, right? I generate feelings. Intellectual, meditation. Feelings are generated. Step number 3 is feelings are generated. Step number 1 is the learning. Step number 2 is the meditation. Step number 3, I get it. Step number 3, I want to just be clear, is the emotional arousal. And step number 4, maaseh, you do it, right? You give the tzedakah, you put on the tefillin, you pray, you learn Torah, because you're aroused, you're excited. What happens if step number 3 never happens for you? You studied, you meditated. Step number 3 never happened. Just jump to step number 4. But I'm missing a step. Well, maybe I'm a hypocrite. Maybe God's going to say, hey, you're serving me and you're not inspired. That's what our sages say. God will connect the action to the feeling. Even if you do the action without the feeling, you tried. As long as you did step number 1 and number 2, you studied and you meditated, you tried to develop a connection with God, even if you didn't actually get inspired emotionally. It says HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa lo lemaaseh. God will connect this action as if you did it with feeling. Okay, so in our class, we always end off with a lesson for education. We entitled our series of classes "Tanya in Education." So I want to say a couple of points before we end about how we can apply this chapter to education. Okay, so first of all, I can tell you, ideally, as educators, parents, teachers, or even with our own self, we would love it if we were so mature, if our children were so mature, if we were so mature that as soon as we knew that something is the right thing, boom, we can do it. We don't need any work on it. Actually, tell you a story, right? I had my father. I'll tell you two short anecdotes. One is about a Rebbe, and one is about a person like you and me. Tell you the Rebbe story first. I think it's the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was visited by a doctor. The previous Rebbe used to chain smoke. His secretary would put on a table an ashtray, a bowl of cigarettes in a ring all around, and he would sit and he would learn, he would write, he would deal with many affairs of the Jewish community, but smoke one after the other. He would light one cigarette from the other. He would go through the bowl, right? And in his later years, one day a doctor came to visit him, and it was at the time he was already living in America, and somehow it came up. The doctor said to him, "Do you smoke?" He said, "Yes." He says, the Surgeon General has just released, way back the story happened, that smoking is bad for your health. You shouldn't smoke. After this conversation, the examination is over. The doctor pulls out from his pocket a pack of cigarettes, right? And he lights up and he offers the Rebbe, would you like a cigarette? So the Rebbe tells him, "I don't smoke." So he says, "What do you mean? You just told me you chain smoke." He says, "Yes, but you told me that smoking is not healthy. I don't smoke." And from that day forward, for the rest of his life, he did not smoke.
That's so weird.
Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, he stopped smoking from then on. He actually also told his son-in-law, the Rebbe, and the Rebbe also was a big smoker, did not stop as well. And the Rebbe instructed his followers, the previous Rebbe wrote a letter that once these guidelines came out, if you're under 20 years old, don't start smoking. Don't start smoking. If you're over 20, please try not to. Right? But if you're young, definitely not. If you're over, I'm asking you not to. Okay? So that's okay. So we're gonna say, that's a Rebbe. He's got special powers. Right? To tell you another anecdote. One of my father's friends in college. My father was studying with a Jew. They were learning together Tanya or Chassidut, and this guy, he liked to hang out with girls, with whoever. And one day, my father says to him, "You want to come learn?" He's like, I'm busy tonight. So my father said, "Come on, what's going on? Tell me, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm going on a date." So my father, could be very, straight. Sometimes he tells the guy, he says, according to Jewish law, according to the Shulchan Aruch, it is forbidden for a boy to date a girl unless the intention is to consider her as a potential marriage partner. My father gave him this information. Now, between me and you, you're going to give someone such information, your average person such information, like, okay, thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day. I'm going to go enjoy my date. We'll go, have a good time. What happens? A couple weeks later, he sees the guy again. He says, "Wish me mazal tov." He says, "What's a mazal tov?" "I went out with the girl. I followed your advice. I considered her as a potential marriage partner. I've come to the conclusion she's the right one." They got married. They moved to Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and their son, their oldest son, is one of my classmates, one of my friends. You can imagine. They became Chabad Hasidim. Yeah. So that's like your average, Jew, your average person. I mean, he's a smart guy, right? But you could really take. You can really. It would be really nice to be on that level.
Sometimes one advice change the life.
Right. But what about your student who's not doing that? You tell them, the teacher comes in the classroom. The teacher is all excited. Let me teach you. Let me tell you. The student's sitting there chewing the gum. Thank you very much. Or nowadays the fidget spinners. Hello, come on, get inspired. What's going on? So should we feel, what? I'm a failure if I can't inspire my students. Or I'm a failure if I can't inspire myself. I'm a failure if I can't inspire my children. The answer is no. What's important is to put the effort. Teacher must come into the classroom inspired. The parent must be inspired. And for ourselves, to inspire ourselves, we have to try our best to study and to come and present information in an inspiring way. But if we find that we've done everything we can, where we're not coming in and being boring and just doing, but the person does not, our students, our children are not showing, such passion, it may not be anything that we can do. It may be something of their personality, or maybe they're not yet fully mature enough to deal with that, the way what we're presenting. But our job is to give it over and to guide them to practice. And at least let them be engaged, whether or not they're into it. Don't eat yourself up, and don't, at the same time, like sometimes parents or educators will sort of get down hard on the student and say, well, I told you this many times. How come how come you're not excited, or how come you're not taking me seriously? How many times did I tell you to study for your test, or how many times did I tell you, this piece of advice or that piece of advice? And you know what? You may have to repeat the same thing a million times, and it may never sink in. As long as they're doing it, right? Whether or not they are emotionally into it or not, right? This is the goal. And it may be that some people do not develop emotion for things like others. It may be that their emotion is hidden inside. They're aware of what you're saying. They heard what you're saying, but they didn't take it seriously enough to change their personality. And that's possible. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that that's the reality for that person, that in order for them to do the right thing, you have to keep on reminding them time after time after time again. As long as you're making that effort and they're following through, then you're okay. Okay, so I think that's how now we're going to end this class. Next week, we're going to discuss what happens with a Beinoni, with a Jew who can't even put in that effort. He can't even concentrate for long enough to understand anything about God. That's coming up next week. Meanwhile, everyone, have a wonderful week and keep studying and keep meditating about God.
Okay, one question, please, about the praying.